just like a half, disembodied presentation. Where does it start? Thank you, Val. So again, if there's any questions around Centennial, the scope, how to get involved, even if you have, say, like, I know that I have 5 hours that I can, dedicate in January, we will find something for you to do. All right, moving along in the agenda, I'm going to hand it over to Alexis Dirkmeyer, Treasurer, for a finance update.
Thanks, Hel. Hello, everyone on Zoom. Good evening to those in the room. Just wanted to give a quick finance update. So as promised, we wanted to make sure that we're able to share the latest account numbers for every single meeting. So we did a little bit of education around this during our last GMM. So I'll circle back on that a bit, but the totals are on the slide. I think just a few things to note. Our investment account continues to grow, which is great. It's performing well. We are doing some work at the board level to identify how we may be able to spend that strategically back to the community. So I think more updates to membership there coming up, especially as we kind of tie some of that into Centennial timing and planning. But that's good news, that continues to grow. And then the two lines down below are more kind of our operational expenses. So we did just make a recent payment for our AJLI dues. So we kind of talked about that last month, but part of your overall dues does directly go back to AJLI, our governing body. So that's kind of the big, I'll say the big change in that, a couple thousand there that went out the door. But happy to answer any additional questions. But again, a commitment that we will share these with membership every month that we meet. I think the one exciting update to share too is that our league year taxes for last year, thank you, Christine. This is a very big accomplishment too. I can't stress it enough. The 20 to 21 league year have been filed. So historically, we've been running a few years where, to no fault of our own, we've been having to file an extension with the IRS. So there was no extension needed this year. We got it all done on time, and that is done. So exciting update on that one. And then if we flip just one slide over, I just wanted to make a quick plug. I know Jenny's on Zoom, but Jenny and I are kind of leading the charge from the finance perspective. Jenny is the assistant treasurer this year. And I just put up our focus areas. I think we've probably touched on these a little bit in a roundabout way, but I think just having it up there is helpful to see in terms of what we're really focused on from a strategic perspective for the league. So increasing financial education is a big priority for us. For those that attended the recent finance panel event, that was a nice big objective check mark there towards that goal. Touched on the strategic spending initiatives, more to come there. You'll hear some updates from us. And then from a DEI perspective, right, I think we'll hear more about that work that's going on across the league, but really trying to take ownership within our own committee to see how we can help to be just more aware, and socially responsible investing is a good lever to pull in that space. So we actually had our Morgan Stanley rep who leads the investment strategy for our account come to our board meeting last month. We had a nice deep dive as a board to talk through, what are some next steps that we can take down this path. So a commitment from Jenny and I that we'll be sharing more with you on that in the coming months, but just know that there's some good work going on behind the scenes there. And so I will make a plug now. I was not at Date the Slate or Date Your Slate. Finance was not represented, but we are always looking for more involvement. So while this isn't a like a slated committee, right? There's still an opportunity. We'll talk about the org structure in a minute, but there's still an opportunity to be involved if you have an interest in helping to support us in our focus areas. And there's obviously some tactical pieces as we head into the new year with dues renewal process, et cetera. There's definitely going to be some activity. So if you do have an interest, just let me or Jenny know. We're happy to connect you to our monthly meetings, and we'd love to have you. So I think that sums it up. It was short and sweet tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Are there any? Write it on chat. I can't see. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, perfect. Thank you all. Thank you for the time.
Thanks, Alexis. All right, moving along. So we are going to move into our org chart discussion. I apologize, I might be off screen for the folks on Zoom. So right now, as the org chart exists right now, if you've been in the league for a couple of years, and maybe if you've seen as a first year active, we are a fairly top heavy league, and we went over this at the last GMM. So in an effort to rectify this for this league year, knowing we are running a little bit more lean, we had proposed last GMM to streamline things a bit and make a couple moves. So we proposed to move new member under placement, LDME under fund, temporarily remove, I don't like that word, but remove the membership VP and dovetail DEI under community. So again, just to make things a little bit more streamlined for this year, ease of use for reporting, and just for function of the league. Oh, and so now formally, the board has adopted this, and so we will now bring it to the membership for a vote. And Natalie, shall I hand it over to you to make the motion?
Sure. I move to approve the policies and procedures temporary changes for the 2021-2022 league year as presented.
Excellent. Do we have a second?
Second.
Laura? Any discussion?
What policies have been changed? Have the policies been changed?
The policies have been changed.
Do we have any text of that anywhere?
We should, yeah.
If we're voting on it, somewhere we should have that.
Yes.
We do have it. Natalie did a really amazing job of crafting that. Do you?
I do have to.
Can we-
We will email it over and then share it up on the screen.
Okay. So in the meanwhile, while we're waiting for those to get pulled up, we'll come back to you, Christine. Are there any other questions around function, form, anything like that? Anyone on chat? Do I see a question in chat? Okay.
Would this be for just this year or how is this?
Yep, so this is just for this league year. One thing, just looking forward and being completely transparent, if it's something that we find really works for the league, or maybe, we find that the board, has always been top heavy and this is the way we want to move forward, we can look to making this a more permanent change, but this is for this current league year only. Great question.
Do you want me to share so that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. And one of the questions, just the way this was worded, one of the questions in the chat was, is the membership VP the only temporary one? And the answer that I think I heard you say was, no, they're all temporary. It's just,
Yeah, so to repeat the question, I'm not sure if everyone can hear, was that is the membership VP the only temporary one? The answer is no, all of these shifts are temporary for this year. Okay.
I just wanted to clarify, I'm totally supportive of this. I just wanted to make sure that we.
Absolutely. Yes.
yeah. And so basically we have policy change forms that have been completed, and then once the vote is, once it's approved, then we would go in and actually update the language. But it's in these, which I will show in a second. So this is, okay. Can someone repeat the question to the folks at home? Oh. So this is the policy change for membership. So this is basically to shows the section, and basically it's streamline reporting structure, your leadership positions
And again, if you can't hear, I'll repeat the question once KP is done. But this is the policy change form for membership specifically.
So here's the language.
And for anyone who might not be reading right now, the LDME committee will report to the Fund Development VP for the remainder of the 2021-2022 league year. The new member committee will report to the Mentoring and Placement VP for the remainder of the league year, and the membership VP role should be removed for the 2021-2022 league year.
And then I have the other one, which says community impact.
I don't know if that means the policy change stuff, but I don't think DEI.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but
I don't think it says DEI.
It doesn't give you that.
yeah, I know, it didn't share that. Sorry, hold on 1 second.
Holding.
Oh, there you go.
Yes. So the next step is for the community change is the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Ad Hoc Committee will report to the Community Impact VP for the remainder of the 2021-2022 league year. The DEI Task Force Ad Hoc was a little bit nebulous. So we are just making it a formal home for this league year.
Confirm there's no question.
Are there any other questions in the room or in the Zoom? Abby?
How will the success or, assumed success of the structure be evaluated at the end of the year?
I think that is open to interpretation. Sorry, the question is how will success be measured? I think that's open to interpretation. I'll really look to the placement committee membership to see what the membership needs and wants for next year under Bell and our future PEE's leadership.
And just to comment on that, some of the need for this was the fact that we had open positions. So essentially things would not have gotten done had we not done this. So in a way, anything we're doing is a metric of success compared to had we left the positions open.
And to repeat for the folks at home, just because there were so many open positions heading into this year, making this change really streamlined operations to make function a little easier. All right, great questions. Anyone else here or on Zoom? Sorry. So we have a motion, our second discussion, and then to a vote. All in favor of the motion as presented? Looks like we have everyone but new members. And then do we have a digital? Okay. So while we are tabulating that, we'll come back to that. Okay. Yes.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. I lost my screen.
Yeah, I had to take over. So
Okay. All right. So moving along, I keep moving the mark. I apologize. I will hand it over to Jess Nason for a PEE update. Okay.
My marker. I learned how to use the clicker earlier. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. Filling in for Eliza today. So hopefully, as many of you know, we just we're in the process of electing our next PE. So this is an amazing opportunity for a member to lead our amazing organization. You'll get an opportunity to work with other league members and then our internal and external partners as well. And you may be thinking like, wow, this is like really early. Why do you have so much time? Why are we vetting for a PE so far in advance? And that's so that they can work under the president and the president-elect to get some training, hopefully attend some of the amazing AGLI conferences if those come back, and have ample time to prepare. And in order to be eligible, you must be a third-year active and serve both as a chair of one of our committees and on the board of directors. So the PE timelines, our nominations just closed at noon on Friday. Thank you to everyone who put in a nomination or self-nominated. We had a great response, so thank you for your participation. So all of our eligible members were before that obviously contacted and made aware that they were eligible, and now it's to the placement committee to start conducting interviews, and in December we will present the PE candidate to the board for approval, and then it will move to January GMM where the membership will vote on the PE candidate. So super quick update today. The last reminder is that if you have any questions about placement or what next year might look like for you as you're if you're a new member and your first year active, or if you are an active member and are starting to think about what you might want to do in the next league year, you can reach out to your placement advisor, and you're like, who is my placement advisor? Just email placement@JLP Maine if you're unsure, and we'll let you know and connect you with your advisor. I think that's it for me today.
Perfect.
Thanks.
All right. So now moving in to our guest speakers section, it's my distinct honor to introduce Cameron Normand. She's the head of federal affairs for Sony Pictures Entertainment and past president, Junior League of Washington. Kristen, are we good from a tech perspective?
You can just stop sharing. And actually, there's a bio on the next slide if you want to go to that. It's long, but
All right, I will stop sharing. And I will mute myself.
I don't know if she knows.
Oh, Cameron, you can take it away whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Hi, guys. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. And I have to tell you, as a league that I was president of the Junior League of Washington, and I'll get into my background a little bit, but I loved hearing the conversation around your centennial because we went through that a few years ago, and it's such an exciting time. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you real quick. Hang on one second. There we go. Hopefully that works. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I know Diane has been a member now here for a few years, and Diane Lebson and I know each other originally from the Junior League of Washington, and I am now sort of a half-time Mainer. I've been spending time in Cushing, where we bought a place last year or beginning of this year. So have not made it down to the league in Portland, but hope to do so at some point. I did attend your Sustainers Luncheon with Diane this summer and loved meeting everybody. So I think you guys are doing great work in Portland, and I'm so happy to be here. Very quickly, a little bit about me. I have been in the Washington, D.C. area for 21 years. I am, as was mentioned, head of federal affairs for Sony Pictures. I came up to Capitol Hill after law school. I went to University of South Carolina undergrad at Emory for law school down south. My accent is mostly gone, but sometimes comes out a little bit. But I went up to Capitol Hill thinking I would stay there for just a couple of years and get some good experience after law school, and 21 years ago have not looked back. So as a lobbyist, and I worked on Capitol Hill for about 5.5 years before going downtown, which is what they call going to the private sector, to lobby. And as a lobbyist, I largely describe my role as being like an educator, because what I do is go in and meet with members of Congress and their staff to talk to them about issues that are important to my company, and educate them on the things that my company does, and then also try to convince them about the merits of certain legislation or pitfalls of other legislation. So it's been a really fun job for the last couple of decades, which I can't believe I'm saying that. But it's, we'll talk a little bit more about the political environment a little later. I was president of the Junior League of Washington from 2015 to 2016 and loved my time there. I've been very involved in the DC community in a number of different organizations. So have got a lot of background in nonprofit governance and kind of dealing with this sort of push-pull on the advocacy stuff, which I know you guys have been talking a lot about. So, and that's probably a good segue into our conversation. What is advocacy? And now this may be something, you know, you may roll your eyes and say, well, I know what advocacy is, but I just wanted to go over a little bit of the discrete differences between advocacy and lobbying, because they're interchanged a lot, but they're kind of different, right? So advocacy is basically the act of arguing in favor of something like a cause, an idea, or a policy. And so let's take a little bit of a closer look at both. So being involved in a nonprofit like the Junior League, there's zero limit to the amount of advocacy efforts that you can engage in. You can do as much as you want. And I understand you guys have done quite a bit around the Free the Flow initiative. I guess was that last year? I don't know. I was really impressed by what I read. It sounds like a fabulous undertaking, and like you guys really had some great impact in the community. Lobbying, and this is the definition under federal tax law, is an attempt to influence specific legislation. This can be done in a couple of different ways. So one is grassroots, and I think you guys have actually engaged in both of these types of efforts, right? So the grassroots efforts, you know, contacting or you know, influencing the public to then contact their policymakers to affect change, to propose, to support, to oppose legislation, or direct. So that's, you know, having conversations, advocating your position directly with lawmakers. And it sounds like you guys have kind of done both of those things with the Free the Flow effort. I think you, your board endorsed some legislation around that. And I think you had some members testifying at the state legislature on legislation related to that. So I mentioned this distinction between lobbying and advocacy because it's a distinction that leagues really need to talk about as they think about the type of impact that they want to have on various issues in their communities, right? So I think that a nice way to kind of frame this is all lobbying is advocacy, but not all advocacy is lobbying, right? So I mentioned that there's no limit to the amount of non-lobbying activities that nonprofits can undertake. So, you know, you guys can engage in any kind of advocacy campaigns that you want, however much time you want to spend on them. But lobbying activities are restricted to a percentage of your operating budget. And there's some pretty specific rules in the law about, you know, tracking all of that. I don't think it's any kind of situation that any junior league would run up against, but just for awareness, it's something that in my professional life, I have to track how much time I'm spending on the Hill, talking to members of Congress, engaging in political activities so that I can report that several times a year. So super fun. I thought I was getting away from that by not practicing law, but not so much. So again, lobbying is more around a specific issue or a specific topic, specific piece of legislation. Advocacy is a little broader. It's focused more on educating about the issue. I would encourage you, if you are considering lobbying activities, and I know you have done some in the past, and I'm sure you may have done this, but to talk with counsel, because activities conducted by volunteers are considered lobbying. So, you know, you had a couple of members testify, you know, you did some other activities. And again, I say this just because I'm a lawyer and we're overly cautious, but I don't think that there's any way that any junior league would run up against, you know, some kind of rule where they've got to declare what they're doing on lobbying or file anything or any of that stuff, but it is something to consider as you're thinking about the best way to engage in advocacy around some of these issues. And then I'll just mention, I said at the outset that as a lobbyist, my job is largely as an educator, and that is the common denominator between lobbying and advocacy. What you're really talking about is educating for impact, right? Educating for change. And whether you're talking about lobbying, whether you're talking about advocacy in, an issue campaign or something like that, they both can be incredibly effective and can be just really powerful tools for nonprofits to use. So let's talk a little bit about advocacy in the Junior League. So as you know, probably whether a league engages in lobbying activity really is up to the individual league, right? A JLI doesn't come in and kind of tell you do or don't. And I'll give you a little bit of experience from how we dealt with it in the Junior League of Washington. You would think, being in Washington, D.C., that we would be right in the middle of all these debates and some of these social issues and stuff like that. However, our league decided pretty firmly against engaging in any kind of lobbying advocacy. And we've had a lot of discussions about it over the years. There have also been discussions at the AJLI level over this. And I'll give you an example that happened during my year as president. Our issue mainly around lobbying was the potential conflict of interest that it could cause for our members. So as you can guess, in DC, we have got a huge number of members that work on Capitol Hill, that work around the Hill, associations, lobbying firms, companies that are engaged with Congress every day. And we were very concerned that those members would have, conflicts of interest that could impact their employment. And I'm just looking at a couple of questions here, sorry. Diane says, is there a difference in restrictions on what a nonprofit can do on the Hill versus in state legislatures? Diana, it varies by state. Every state has its own rules. So I have no idea what the rules in Maine are. You would have to talk with someone that works with the legislature here that would know. And the percentage of the budget limit. So I don't know in terms of nonprofits. I know from my professional world as a lobbyist, if I am spending more than 20% of my time on lobbying activities, I have to report it. I don't know for nonprofits if that's different or if it's the same, but and Diane says when I worked at United Way, it was 5%. Yeah, I just don't know. But again, the Junior League's mission is not to be an advocacy organization. So I have a hard time thinking that Junior League would run up against those numbers. But again, I think it's worth having a conversation, if you have pro bono counsel or whatever, having a conversation about it. So when I was president of the Junior League of Washington, we had a big debate with AJLI around the issue of advocating for children's nutrition. Great issue, right? Who doesn't want kids to have access to healthy meals and healthy lunches and all of the things, right? So I was talking about, members and potential conflicts of interest. I had a conflict of interest around that, which sounds crazy, right? Because again, who doesn't want kids to have access to nutrition and, to nutritious meals and all the things, and at the time, First Lady Michelle Obama was super involved in all this stuff. Well, at the time I worked for a company called Time Warner, and we owned CNN and Turner and Warner Brothers, HBO. And one of the things under discussion under the broader umbrella of children's nutrition was the potential of a regulation banning certain food and drink commercials. Well, one of the companies that Time Warner owned at the time was Cartoon Network. As you can imagine, lots of commercials on Saturday mornings for sugared cereals and all kinds of other stuff. So we were on the opposite side of that issue. It's not like we're trying to feed a bunch of junk food to kids, but that's where the company was. It was not an issue that I worked on, but it was certainly a conflict of interest for me to be involved in an organization that would have been or could have been lobbying, for something that restricted that, right? I didn't talk to anyone at the time from the Junior League of Atlanta, but my guess is that if they have members that work for Coca-Cola, which I am sure they do, that they all probably had conflicts of interest too. So all of that to say that it can be a real dilemma because, you're looking at these issues that on their face seem amazing to get involved with, but when you go build, just a little bit below the surface, there could be some potential landmines for members. So it's just something to consider. I mean, AJLI had a heated debate when I was president about, whether the association should play a role in this, debate over potential legislation and stuff, around children's nutrition. And ultimately they did not, because a number of the larger leagues that were based in state capitals had members that could potentially have conflicts of interest. So I say all that just as a way to say, all of this is great and impactful and worth thinking about, right? So that leads us to, should you lobby, right? And I know you guys have already engaged in some lobbying. The short answer is, because I'm a lawyer, I can't help it. It depends. And really every league is different, but before we get into some of the questions that, you might want to ask yourself about these issues, let's just quick top line of the current political environment. And again, one word, complicated, I don't know, difficult, hostile, I mean, if you turn on CNN, what today's political environment looks like. It is really partisan. I've been in DC for 21 years. And when I got to DC, you could always work across the aisle with people. And I had very close friends who were not in the same party that I was in, or that my boss on the Hill, was in. And that's not as much the case today. You see an increasing hostility between the parties. Both parties are kind of playing to their edges, if that makes sense. And it's really hard for them to get much of anything done right now. So it's, for someone who engages with them on a daily basis, it can be very frustrating. I would imagine that at least at the federal level, if nonprofits are coming in and trying to advocate for, different causes, that it would be equally, if not more frustrating, just because so little is getting done right now. So the state level is a whole different ballgame. I won't speak to that because I just don't have the experience with Maine or any other state legislature. But I think that across the country, you're seeing just this sort of general environment that has increased in partisanship, and things are just more complicated than they used to be. I feel like I sound like my parents. Anyway, so some things to consider. We talked a little bit about the legal stuff. Funding, obviously, you're going to have donors who are like really excited and pumped about whatever issue area it is. You may have some donors that turns them off depending on the issue, who knows? Same with volunteers. We talked about the conflict of interest issue. It may be that volunteers aren't interested in that issue or have concerns about that issue or whatever, or potential volunteers. And so there are a few questions that I'll kind of run through that are a little bit of how we looked at it in Washington, DC. And that is starting with, what's your why? So thinking about, what's the purpose of the advocacy? What is it you're hoping to accomplish? Are you trying to get legislation across the finish line? Are you trying to impact change? Are you trying to educate about the issue? What's the goal? And then Junior League is a really mission-oriented organization, right? I think every league in every city is pretty cognizant and focused on our mission, which is promoting volunteerism, developing the potential of women, improving communities through the leadership of our trained volunteers, right? So, with whatever lobbying you might be considering, or even advocacy campaign, how does that advance the mission? And then empowering members, we talked about with the conflict of interest example, that was sort of the big hang up that we had in Washington over getting involved in lobbying campaigns on behalf of the league. And then, is it the most impactful way to engage? And by that, I mean, if you know that it's a session of the legislature that is going to be really heated and nothing's going to get done, is it the best? I don't want to call it bang for your buck, but are you going to get the biggest impact over going in and lobbying for a bill that may or may not happen? I mean, what's the sort of political environment? And so I would encourage you, I mean, those are kind of the 4 main questions. I've hit all of this pretty quickly because I know y'all are a little pressed for time. And so I didn't want to spend too long. I wanted to leave enough time for questions, but those are the 4 questions that I think are really key to sort of evaluating, where you should be on a lobbying initiative if you're considering, pushing a specific piece of legislation or lobbying on an issue at large. It can be kind of more complicated than it seems on its face. And that's at least what we found in our league. And I think what some of the others have found as well. So I'll leave you with this quote I really like: all advocacy is at its core an exercise in empathy, which I think is hard to remember sometimes in today's heated political world, right? But I appreciate y'all having me tonight. If you have any questions, and I'm happy to take questions now. If you have any questions after tonight or want to talk about anything that I've talked about, you can feel free to reach out to me directly at my emails on the screen. And then I did put my website on there. In addition to being a lobbyist, I am also kind of a serial entrepreneur, and I have a website, thiscustomlife.com, where I help stepmoms. So if there are any stepmoms that are looking for resources, head to my site and I'm happy to hook you up. But that's all I've got. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions that y'all may have.
Does anyone in the room have any questions for Cameron?
I think the room is muted, so she can't hear you.
We are unmuted, so. No? Yeah, how's the Zoom chat looking? I'm gonna go hit my mark.
Nothing yet.
All right, Cameron, I want to thank you. I think I had wrote down a question. I guess maybe this is a very main specific question, but is there anything you would suggest in terms of not running afoul of the IRS in terms of lobbying efforts?
For nonprofits, I think really it's probably key to get what that percentage is. And Diane mentioned that 5%. By percentage, I mean the amount of time / budget that you're spending on lobbying. And I don't know what that would be for nonprofits. So that's something probably, if you've got any, lawyers that you have, on retainer or pro bono, that would probably, or if you've got anybody in the league that, works in that area in Maine or, engages in any advocacy here, that may be something to chat with them about. I'm sorry. I wish I knew the answer to that.
No, that's perfect. That's because that was enlightening for me. And I was like, we should probably look into that.
Yeah.
Emily, go ahead.
I have a question. When the Washington League was trying to do advocacy, were you guys trying to do it for District of Columbia specifically or on a national level?
Did you get that, Cameron?
I didn't hear any of it. Sorry.
So when you were doing lobbying, was it for DC specifically or more of the national level?
So for the, you mean when we were looking at like the children's nutrition stuff? Yeah, so that was at the national level. But then because it was something AJLI was looking to engage in, it was something that the leagues had to take a look at. And I think we were particularly attuned to it given our location. you know, I mean, because I think what I mentioned, you know, so many of our members are working on or around or with Capitol Hill. So, you know, we were pretty keen to understand the discussion and figure out kind of where we wanted to be. But I know it's a debate that a number of leagues located in state capitals have had, because they also have a lot of members that are lobbying at the state level or potentially at the local level or whatever. I don't know if that helps answer the question or not.
We're good. Abby.
In our league, we have the gift of having a leader who has a performance background and a PEE who's a very natural, gifted speaker. But for somebody who is interested in getting their feet wet lobbying, like what's kind of an entry level way of building some comfort in that kind of activity?
Bless you for all that up top. I'm gonna sum it up. So what is the best way for someone who maybe isn't maybe well versed in, I guess, public speaking, or kind of really engaging with larger audiences or diverse audiences? Like, how would an individual get their feet wet in lobbying or advocacy specifically?
Well, I think it depends on kind of what you're interested in doing. If it's lobbying on, you know, an issue that you care about at the state level or whatever, I mean, I think it's really, I mean, you can start at the kind of, I'll call it like citizen advocacy level, where, you know, you can write a letter to your representative or your state senator, call their office. I mean, if you're a constituent, most times, at least I've found on the federal level, and I cannot imagine that's different on the state level, they'll meet with you. If you've got something you want to talk to them about, they'll meet with you, or they'll have a staff member meet with you. So there are certainly, I mean, there are lots of ways to, and I know that that's like a kind of a weird thing that probably doesn't occur to people very often, to like set up a meeting with their representative, but it's easy to do. And so I definitely encourage you to get involved in that. I don't know if that helps answer the question or not.
We're getting a thumbs up. I'll also add just for my own commentary. I think a lot of us are in this room are civically minded. And I think there probably is a perception of like, oh, well, you know, so-and-so would never take a meeting with me because I'm just, you know, a lowly resident of Dayton. Like, but I think to Cameron's point, like, you know, make that phone call, send that email, talk to the staffers, and, you know, start to make those inroads and have those conversations.
And go to their, you know, a lot of, I think at the federal, state, and local level, a lot of them will hold town halls, and you can go to the town hall and, you know, ask them a question either during the town hall or go up to them afterwards or whatever. I mean, I think, you know, most members are really receptive and they want to hear, you know, what their constituents think about things.
So I see another.
Just more of a comment, but just to add on to that, if you want to have a voice, your town and district representatives for local stuff are most likely to listen to you. So look up who your local reps are, and you can also do written commentary on any proposed bill in Maine. For last year, they did live tweet testimony, and I believe they'll probably do that again this year. So you can, if you wanted to, you can comment as a citizen on the bill and enter that into public record.
So just for the folks on Zoom, Emily mentioned that, and this is specific to Maine, I'm sure other communities as well, but you can enter a comment to go in the public record and testify on Zoom. Some of us did do that this past spring. So that's available to us as well. Yeah.
Because the junior league is nonpartisan, is there a point where like advocacy and lobbying becomes too political?
So
That's probably not an easy answer.
I think I'll guess what Cameron's going to say and say it depends. But so the question was, because the league is nonpartisan, like, is there a threshold, or is there a tipping point where we kind of toe that line of, you know, pushing that envelope and having it become partisan? And then I'll add my own question to that, is like, how do we as a league navigate or avoid that?
That's such a great question, and it's really difficult. especially in today's world, because even like the smallest issue becomes partisan, and stuff that didn't used to be partisan is partisan, you know. I think that the biggest way to keep something from becoming a partisan fight is if you are involved in lobbying on a particular piece of legislation, you know, is to make sure that there are co-sponsors or members, you know, of Congress or representatives on both sides of the aisle that support it. And that way that'll help. And I don't mean like having, you know, 15 Republicans and 1 Democrat or vice versa. I mean like a decent kind of chunk of both. Or if it's not a piece of legislation, then sort of looking at the potential political pitfalls on each side. Is there, you know, I don't know, like the children's nutrition, it's sort of, you know, you look at it on its face and it's like, you know, what kind of problem could anybody find with this? Well, you know, you get into regulations, and then the Republicans are going to get exercised about, you know, too much regulation, or the Democrats will get exercised over, you know, something else. And so it is a difficult thing to navigate. But I would, you know, I think do some research and kind of see what folks on both sides of the aisle have said about the issue. But it's something to certainly be cognizant of today, and to really like do a deep dive into the issue and see if you can identify like anything that may be an issue with either side. It's hard though, it's a complicated thing.
Yeah, sorry, I saw one of the, Laura, was that?
Yeah, I was just kind of hoping that we could revisit the issue about members having conflicts of interest. Like how does that really impact the actions of the league versus the actions of the individual member? Like, is it kind of like the member just can't volunteer to participate, or would they like have to recuse, like leave the league potentially? Like, how serious is the conflict of interest and the ramifications?
Yeah, so I think that's really the, so how do you navigate the conflict of interest, you know, for a given member within a league? What are the ethical, legal steps that the league or the individual would have to take to, I guess, level set or make it fully ethical, fully legal?
Yeah, I can tell you how we approached it, and I don't know if this is the right way or not, but you know, we approached it sort of from the perspective of, so like, for example, I keep going back to this one example, but it's sort of the most tangible that I have. If that had been something that AJLI had said, hey, we as a national organization are going to start engaging in this, and we're going to go to the Hill and do this. And they weren't that strident about it. But if they had been, I would have had to resign as president of the Junior League of Washington, because I could not be involved with lobbying on the other side of an issue that my company, you know, was that invested in, right? So, I mean, we took it pretty seriously, and we took it seriously to think about individual members. I mean, yes, you know, you could say, well, the members should just recuse themselves. But as a nonprofit, as a volunteer organization, do we really want to put members in that position? And, you know, I think in a time when membership numbers kind of across the board are going up and down, and, you know, I mean, I don't know that that's a great position to be putting members in if we don't have to, right? But again, I think it's something that you really have to, each league has to kind of make that decision. I don't know that there's a right or wrong way to do it, but the conflict of interest thing, I mean, it is a serious matter. And I know for my job, in fact, I've had to sign something recently because of my my kind of side hustle business, saying that, you know, it was not a conflict with any of the activities I'm engaging with on behalf of Sony Pictures and yada, yada, yada. So, I mean, employers take it pretty seriously. So I don't know, that isn't really an answer, but
I'm getting a head nod.
Okay.
Kristen, did you?
That was actually my question, oddly.
Oh, okay, perfect. We 2 for 1. One more sweep of the room. And the Zoom, how's the Zoom chat looking?
Good, we have a separate question, but we'll take that offline.
Okay. So I guess if there's nothing else, Cameron, thank you so much. This was wonderful. Getting a round of applause in the room. So if there's any questions, definitely feel free to direct them to Cameron, to myself, to Diane. And again, thank you so much for your time. And you're in DC now?
I'm in Cushing right now.
Well, you're in Cushing right now.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's here, so stay warm.
Yes. Hopefully I'll see you guys in person at some point because we're planning on spending more and more time up here. So
Yes, please do. All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Kristen, is there anything I have to do over here? Okay.
Unless you want to do that.
No, I don't really care. That's fine. We're just gonna move right along. So we are running pretty much on time. Excellent job, y'all. So looking ahead, there is no GMM in December, so happy holidays, everyone. Looking into the new year, January 21st is the Mariners game. The tickets will go on sale in December. January 26th is the January GMM. Oh, that hurt. That will be virtual, just as a heads up. There's going to be the podcast brunch discussion, on January 29th. Please see the next newsletter for details. Like I mentioned earlier, the Socks and Shoe Drive is extended through the end of this month. And I was asked very oddly to announce that the Kraken will be making her arrival sometime in December. So, all right. If there's no questions, if there are questions, feel free to
Remind people who to contact while you're waiting.
Yes, I will put out an official communication while I am out. Belle will be helming things with the support of Jess. If there are specific questions you have around specific league issues, go to that dedicated chair or VP. I will plan on being back in February-ish, somewhere in there. Depends on when she arrives. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting at 7:36. An excellent evening, everyone. And everyone on Zoom, thanks for tuning in.
And if anyone has donations, I can take them. Well,
You allow them.
Yeah.
Two quick announcements. One, we have 2 bottles of wine for raffle. The first winner is Abby Henry. So, congrats. I'll get you that in a second. And then the second. Also, after our coworkers event, coworkers, the women's networking, what's the word I'm looking for? Co-working space. Leah actually works there now. She doesn't work there. She does work there. She's not there. But they gave us a 3-month trial membership. And the person who won it doesn't necessarily use it. If anyone is interested in using that, taking advantage of it, let me know and I'll put you in connection with the woman who runs it. It's right in downtown Portland, right near our office, actually. It's an awesome space if you are at the financial education panel. Really like great atmosphere. Maybe they have like a little conference room, they have kitchen, like very cool. So if you're interested, email me. You should all have my email because I emailed you first night. Kristen, and let me know. And that's whoever office. Oh, and give me these if you don't. If you still have them. I muted us, so.